Hi everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me today, and I apologize for keeping you waiting. I hope you will enjoy this presentation, although it's recorded. Today I would like to talk about product feedback prioritization and how to do that in Jira using Foxly and automation for Jira. Before I jump into the presentation itself, let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Niki Zavadska, co-founder and product manager at Jaxo. I'm really passionate about customer feedback, not only from our work at Jaxo, but also from my previous work experience when I was working in the customer success team. If you have any questions about today's presentation, you can find me on the Atlassian community or message me on Twitter or LinkedIn. Here is also a calendar link where you can book one-to-one meeting with me so we can discuss more about Foxly. Jaxo, on the other hand, is the company I co-founded in 2018. It is a silver Atlassian marketplace partner that helps teams improve the way they deliver work with our Jira planning apps. If you would like to know more about Jaxo, you can visit our website jaxo.io. We run weekly Atlassian news podcasts and publish project management related resources weekly. Alright, so let's have a look at what we will go through today. First of all, I will touch on feedback management principles and then deep dive straight into the feedback management setup in Jira. Having a good customer feedback management has a direct impact on customer satisfaction, lifetime value, and churn. But as anything else, focusing on customer feedback has its pros and cons you should be aware of. Collecting and focusing on customer feedback helps validate ideas and set direction in early startups and MVPs. And that's extremely important as it allows you to adjust or even create your product roadmap based on what people need, or pivot and get on a different journey altogether. I personally like to create early product roadmaps based on the customer feedback as it allows me to find out what customers want and, most importantly, what they don't want. For example, maybe before launching our MVP, we had slightly different features lined up on our future roadmap, but after the launch, we quickly realized we needed a different feature set to accommodate customers' needs. And even later on, when product is already established, it's worth delivering improvements based on customer feedback as it improves customer satisfaction and loyalty. However, it's not always rainbows and butterflies, right? Working with customer feedback has its cons as well. It very much depends on how you collect customer feedback and how you manage it. For example, imagine that the only source of your feedback is from your customer support team. Many customers who land on support might be upset about something really specific. They will be very loud, but they might not represent the majority of your customers. They just scream the loudest. This might lead you in a wrong direction altogether. That's why it's important to rely on many different sources of feedback, like, for example, demos, customer interviews, support conversation, of course, market research, and so on. And secondly, if your customers give you feedback, they usually expect action. You need to manage their expectations well, otherwise it might turn against you. It's good to follow up with the customers once the idea or improvement is delivered. Before I show you how we created our feedback management and prioritization in Jira and Foxly, let's have a look at the feedback's lifecycle. We defined our feedback lifecycle by these 4 stages: collect, analyze, prioritize, and communicate. In the collect phase, we are collecting and storing all customer feedback from all possible sources, from service desk tickets to forums, emails, customer calls, demos, and social media. We always store raw feedback, the exact words our customers mentioned. This is especially important for us so we understand the vocabulary they're using, and we also don't want to create any assumptions or solutionize on a spot. In the analyze phase, we are grouping customer feedback to the bigger buckets that we call improvements or features. And in the third step, prioritize, we are prioritizing these improvements by using the adjusted RISE prioritization framework, which I will show you a little bit later on. And then improvements are scored and we pick up the highest ones and they will move their way to the development. How many of them always depends on our team's capacity. And once improvement is delivered, we need to close the loop. Now all the work with logging exact sources of the feedback pays off because we can communicate back to the customer that their suggestion or idea was addressed. Alright, so enough concepts and let's have a look on the setup itself. So our product team has 4 apps in our Jira. So I decided to create a special project called Product Feedback, where we will store all our ideas for all of our products. I decided to use a team-managed project because it's just easier to create the fields and manage the board, but you can of course go for a company-managed project as well, if that's your preference. So, first of all, after I created my team-managed project, I created 2 issue types in here. First issue type is called idea. This issue type will be used by me and my team, and while we are collecting ideas and suggestions from our customers, we will store all of these as idea tickets in our product feedback project. There are 2 special fields that I created. One of the field is called raise by. So here we will store contact for who raised the idea. So once the idea is delivered, we can then message them back. And another field that I created is raised during. So this field is important because we will note what's the source of the feedback and where this idea was raised. So my examples here are, for example, demo, support, interview, internal idea, and user testing, and so on. You can of course customize these because it's a custom field in Jira. And then once I have these issue types set up, I of course switch on backlog. So here the principle would be that if my team comes and raises some idea that they heard from their customer, they raise it directly here to the backlog. And then later on, when I'm triaging my backlog, I will create the improvement tickets and I will link these improvement tickets to my idea tickets. And that's how you create this linkage and you create these buckets. And if the idea is already linked to something, you can then move it up to the board. And now on the board, I created the following columns. So I have a triaged ideas column. So that means if the idea is already linked to some improvement, so for example, this one is already linked to my visualize order status improvement, I can move it to a triaged ideas bucket. And all the improvements that I created and that are ready for the prioritization, I leave in the improvements to do column. And then I have 2 columns that represent my quarters. So this is very, very high level roadmap. It's really good for you to just conceptually visualize how many improvements you have for which quarter. So we usually plan 2 quarters ahead. We don't plan more because we usually reshuffle things along the way anyways. So I have here Q4 and Q1 plans. Then there is an in progress column. So here we will move to improvements that are already being worked on by our development team. So for example, if something moves to in progress and our support team has capacity, they can come and they can have a look on these ideas and they can let the customers know that we are already working on their idea and they might expect it in the next few weeks. And then once the improvement was delivered, we move the ticket to notify customer. So this is a notify customer column, and here our support agents can come and then message later on the customers. All right, so I think this is the setup for my Jira project. So let's move to the next phase. And the next phase is Oh, sorry, I just have a quick recap here. I forgot about this slide. So just a quick recap what you need to do to set up your project. So create your project where you will be collecting the feedback. I have chosen the team managed one because it's easiest to set up. Create your 2 custom issue types, ideas and improvements. Don't forget to add the custom fields raised by and raised during, and set up your Kanban workflow, so the columns that I was showing you in the Kanban. And of course, that I forgot, I also created these epics over here that represent my apps. So I have a Riders app, Drivers apps, and Delivery app as example here in this backlog. But of course, it can, for example, represent the project or any apps that you have or grouping that you need to do. Because we are working on multiple apps, it's just good for me to basically filter my backlog by a certain app or my board by a certain app. So that I found that particularly useful. Because maybe, one of the goals is to improve or focus on one app specifically, so I might ignore for some time another app, for example. Okay, so the next step that we have here is analyze. So for this one, we need to first set up Foxly. So what we will do is you can install Foxly from the Atlassian marketplace, and after you install it, you can find it in the project menu under the priorities tab over here. So once you open Foxly, you will already see all your issues that you have in your the Jira project. I already filtered here by improvement, but you would see everything that is in that project. You can filter by issue type, of course. For example, here improvement, and you will only see and prioritize your improvement tickets. So I would like to come and set up my custom prioritization method that I will use to prioritize this product feedback. So you can do that in Customize over here. Now here you can see already pre-selected prioritization template that come with Foxly. What I've done was I've chosen this RISE template from the list, and then I adjusted it a little bit. So this RISE template comes with 4 predefined metrics that you can assess in order to prioritize your tickets better. So these metrics are called impact, effort, confluence, and reach. So let's have a look on each of these metric setups just to understand it a little bit better. So for example, when you're assessing an impact with your team, you can use this star rating, and each of this star rating represents a different value. So I lower these values a little bit so they fit my purpose. So for example, 1 star means value 1, and 5 stars means value 20. Now these numbers are important because with these numbers, we will then calculate actual priority score for each ticket. And here you can see the formula of how we are calculating this priority score. So for effort, we are using a t-shirt sizes from XL to XS to XL. So you can use that with your team just to do a high level estimation of the ticket. So they don't need to be tied to any time estimation or story point estimation. It's really a high level one. Then there is a reach as well. So you can identify how many customers you are going to reach if you're going to launch this feature, if you would deliver this feature. So this is, for example, good if you have some kind of understanding of what areas of your app are used most. So I can give you an example maybe from Jira. So for example, if someone raises some suggestion for Jira to improve on the dashboards, that might have a smaller reach than if someone raises a suggestion for creating a ticket, because every single person in Jira probably creates the tickets, but very less people will come to the dashboards in Jira. So that's just a comparison example from practice. So these are already predefined metrics that you will have there, and I've added this metric over here that is called votes. Now, idea behind this metric and why would I like to use it is that because I'm creating these ideas, tickets that are coming as a feedback, and I'm grouping them into the kind of like a feedback buckets, I would like to know how many people raised interest in this particular improvement, right? So I will count these as a votes. So every single idea that will be linked to the feature request ticket, to the improvement ticket in this project, will count as a vote. So for this one, I would like to collect this automatically because I already create a link between the improvement ticket and idea ticket in Jira via relationship relates to. So what I would like to do is I would like to set up some kind of automation so I don't need to count it and fill it out manually. So I can set this checkbox called store value in custom field, and then after I save my changes, I will see this votes over here, and I can come and start setting up my automation rule. So you can just quickly, for example, go and check how your custom field is named. So if you go to the issue navigator, and then here you will look for votes, then you can here see votes dash rise with voting value. So this is a name of the metric that I just created, and this is a name of a prioritization template that I have in Foxly. So what I can do now is I can go to Automation for Jira in your project, and I can create an automation rule. So in this case, the trigger for my automation rule is if I create a new relationship. So if I link a ticket to the ticket with relationship relates to, then this automation gets triggered, and it has two branches. So I want to cover for both ways. If I link idea to feature and feature to idea, I still want to collect these votes. So that's why I created the two branches for these. So let's have a look at them. So the first branch rule that I have is linked issues. So this will run for linked issues, and I have a lookup function here where I just run this JQL and I look for all the tickets that are in relationship relates to, so that are linked as relates to. And then what I do is I update the issue and I update this Foxly custom field with this lookup size. So I just count how many tickets it found, and I will store the number here. So for example, if this JQL returns me 4 tickets, then here would be stored 4. And I'm doing completely same thing for current issue as well. So for the current issue, I run the same automation and I do a lookup. Again, this is the only difference over here. And again, I look for all the tickets that are in relationship relates to. And then I will edit an issue and I will edit this field votes that represents the metric and Foxly, and I will store the value there as well. All right, so once you set up this automation rule exactly how it is here, then what happens is that if you, for example, create a new feature over here, so let's say we have a new feature saying count of people who are waiting in the area. So that's a new feature improvement. And I would like to link this idea to this ticket. Then I come here and I create a link. And I just find the ticket and link it. And I will move it up because it's triaged now, so I don't need to worry about it. And if you have a look here, you will see that vote rise with this votes metric, it has number 1. So before that it was 0. So you're now counting how many ideas are basically linked to this particular ticket. So if we would like to have a look on, for example, slightly higher numbers, maybe we can look at this one. So there are a few tickets over here, and you can see number of votes here as well. So you can see that the automation is working. All right. So after you set up your automation, after you set up your template over here, you can come to your backlog and you can start grouping the ideas to the improvements tickets, and basically that voting is going to count. So it's really important to set up that automation before you start grouping your ideas with your improvements. Okay, so let's do a little recap. So first we need to install Foxly, set the prioritization template as I showed you, create that voting metric, and store the values in the custom field. And then the second step will be to create an automation to include the votes in the prioritization automatically, so you don't need to count it manually. So that was that automation rule that I was showing you. And lastly, you can finally start creating the improvement tickets and linking your idea tickets to these improvements, and the votes are going to start counting. And then the next phase will be prioritizing. So after you group all of your idea tickets to your improvement tickets, you will get a bunch of improvements that you can prioritize in the column, and you can come here to Foxly. You can filter out the improvements over here. You can also add additional columns on the view. So for example, for me, what is good to see is a parent link. So what kind of epic is this issue linked to? So in my case, the epics represent the apps, so at least I can see what app is this improvement for. And then you can just come here with your team and you can start prioritizing. Once you assign these metrics, then the priority score of the ticket will be calculated. The votes you don't need to add manually because they're automatically calculated via automation for Jira. And then you can just order your backlog from highest to lowest, and you can see the most important tickets that would worth start working on right now. You can also filter out the statuses over here if you would want. So for example, if this would be a completely fresh backlog, I would probably pick up these two top ones. But what you can also do is you can go to Analyze Priorities over here, and you can draw your tickets based on your impact and effort metric, for example. And then you can identify the most impactful tasks with the lowest effort. So that's, for example, this one. So this task is extremely impactful and the effort isn't that high. So it might be good to prioritize this idea for the development because you will get some value quickly. On the other hand, maybe there will be some very low impact task that take a lot of effort, like for example this one. So this one you might want to keep a little bit lower on your backlog and pick it up a little bit later on, or see if you get a little bit more feedback and change your mind about the impact, because you know that a lot of people are asking for this. Alright, so once you pick up your tickets that you would like to push to development, you can just simply click on them and you can change the status here, and you can push them to either of your quarters, so then you can see and you can basically start working on them and prioritizing them with your team. And that's about it for the prioritization itself. What you can do afterwards is just push these tickets to development, and work will happen with each app's project separately. So this is only for your product prioritization. You don't really influence any development workflow over here. So just a little bit of recap. So for prioritization, we will use Foxly, and we assess these four metrics, which is reach, effort, confidence, and impact. You can identify the most impactful and important improvements by simply ordering your backlog by a priority score, using a priority matrix to identify a quick wins. So you have a quick wins quadrant, and you can assess the most impactful tasks with the lowest effort. And you also, once you have all of this, you can plan the next improvements for the next quarter, and you can pick up the ones that you have capacity to work on. And last is the communication part. So that's really important, and that's basically why you probably set up this whole Kanban board. So while your team is developing, you can move the improvements to in progress. At that point, your customer support team can open these idea improvements, and they can pick up the email addresses, or they can get the link for their support ticket, and they can reply to these customers that you are working on the improvement already. And once the improvement is delivered, then it's moved to notify customer column. And then you can, for example, assign this improvement to your support agent or support manager, and then they can all follow up with these customers who raised these ideas. So they can open a ticket one by one, and they can always pick up the email address over here and email them that the improvement was delivered. Right, and that's about it. I think it's quite useful to give you some feedback reply example. So here you can see how one of our support managers replied that one of our improvements that we worked on, that some of the customers asked for, was delivered. So it's quite nice message, including the screenshot and everything, letting customer know that we delivered the idea. So recap again. If when you are working on the improvements, move them to in progress when your dev team starts work on them, or you start on design, so your customer support team also knows, and they can let customer knows. And after you finish your work, move the improvements to notify customers, and you can also include some kind of notes, for example, in the comments and so on, so your support manager has kind of like a screenshots and idea of what the feature is about, so that's also good. And then they can go and notify the customers and let them know that the idea was delivered. And that's it for now. I hope you found this presentation useful. When managing and working with customer feedback, it's important to keep in mind that it's a marathon and not a sprint. You won't be able to deliver every single suggestion and idea, and some things just take longer than the others depending on your team size and workload. And that's why prioritization is so important, so you know you're really focusing on the most important bits. Thank you everyone for your time. If you have any questions, please let me know. And before I finish, I just wanted to let you know that if you would like to get a 10% discount for a year for all of our apps, including Foxly, you can subscribe to our newsletter, and we will send you discount codes in return. Thank you so much.